economy worldwide by 2030.
As opposed, regardless of the restrictions, our GDP growth rates over the last year were 3.6% according to the Russian statistic agency and the IMF. This January, the prediction of the GDP in 2024 was 2.6%, and now the IMF reached this forecast to 3.2% in comparison to the GDP of the European Union, which, according to IMF, should not exceed 1.1%. We consistently and in a targeted manner strengthen our integration ties with friendly countries on bilateral and also within the AU, the CIS, BRICS, and the SCO. We pursue the policy for de-dollarization of foreign economic activities, creating independent payment mechanisms while fulfilling import replacement, import substitution rather program, and these are the outcomes of the restrictions imposed on Russia, and these have every ground to believe that we can overcome every such sanction imposed on us. News.ru, are you with us? Good afternoon, Ms. Zakharova. My name is Mikhail. We have 3 questions. Firstly, the authorities in Yerevan commented on the previous use of the language unlawful invasion of Russia to Ukraine. This has recently been commented by the MoFA of Russia. The Speaker of the Parliament of Armenia, Alen Simonyan, said the unlawful word was used in order to not offend European partners. He also reminded that Belarus and Turkey do not recognize new territories in Russia, and he asked a question in response. Can they only deal with us? How can you comment on this new statement by the leadership of Armenia? I don't know about capacities, and I just hope that those who make such statements will find strength enough to respond to Russian parliamentaries. Dated 24th of April, we will scrutinize the answer from Armenian counterparts, and we will comment on this in public should it be necessary. Secondly, on the initiative of local authorities, Niger's capital, Niamey, raised Russian flags to symbolize friendship with Moscow. At the same time, Western media outlets, specifically The Hill, said that the United States are conceding to Russian geopolitical struggle for Africa. Does the press of the United States exceed the issue in order to sensitize this DOS to the issue? Note their aggressive narratives, struggle for Africa, as they put it. We cooperate with Africa, we pursue cooperation, we provide assistance on their request. We're looking forward for opportunities for mutually beneficial interaction. We build coherence, we develop history, we outline future prospects. We are not fighting, we do not use aggressive rhetoric. Wordings will give you additional facts to justify my point. While reviewing your question in greater detail, why do analysts conclude that the West loses in the African continent? Reason being, they are not working on their mistakes. They're taking decisions which have been killing their reputation on the continent. Instead of correcting these mistakes, they replay that same role as neo-colonialists, using transnational companies through enslaving, through media, through implicit influence, through not promoting equitable cooperation, through various degrading PR campaigns, giving false promises about equality, while at the same time unwilling to sign documents of UN General Assembly, for one, that seek to prevent new forms of racism, xenophobia, and other related things. Maybe it is the reason they believe they are losing. But again, it's not about game, it's not about struggle or wrestling. It is about interaction, about peace, about true equality, rather than false equality. Yet another question. On the 25th of April, Bloomberg said that G7 leaders' advisors intended to have in Doha on the 27th to 28th of April a Copenhagen format meeting with representatives of the global South states on to discuss preparations for the conference on Ukrainian crisis in Switzerland. What do you know about the outcomes of this meeting? How can you comment on this? I suggest that you be very careful whenever you quote this source of mass misinformation, because it proved to be such. Now, with reference to actual facts, this meeting did take place. It was held behind closed doors. It seems they have something to conceal, considering that they have no publication. Things are not going too well for them. The countries of the global South and the East, in spite of the pressure of the West, are not yielding to persuasions. They refuse to support the Zelensky formula and come up with a collective ultimatum against Russia on the insistence of the West. They still question the reasons for such Copenhagen format meetings without Russia's participation. Switzerland wanted to save this whole thing. They suggested that they move away from the Copenhagen format, from the Zelensky formula, and to galvanize a new process, starting with a discussion of through allegedly neutral topics, which are nuclear security, food, and sea navigation, as well as humanitarian issues such as exchange of prisoners and return of children. There is unfortunately nothing new in the initiatives of the Swiss. It is yet another trick, something Kiev has already previously suggested when they tried to convince the global South countries join in at least one of the 10 points of the Zelensky formula in order to interpret this as a consent to all the provisions of that same formula. There have been also efforts and it is been going in spite of the unconstructive approach of Kiev. The IAEA considers the nuclear security issue regarding the Zaporozhye MPP. There are permanent observers there of the agency, but Kiev continuously posing daily threats to the MPP. There have been specific aspects to ensure food security and sea navigation in the Black Sea with participants of Turkey, but Ukraine refused to adopt on the agreements that were in sight.
We're talking about the questions of exchange of people being held in captivity and the return of children to their homelands. But no added value will come out of the discussion of these themes in Switzerland. This Swiss conference is just the consequence of the bankrupt Copenhagen process, which took... of neutral status of Ukraine, the destructive role of the expansion of NATO, the legitimate nature of the sanctions, the neo-Nazi nature of the Kiev regime, and the fact that the Kiev regime keeps violating human rights and the rights of national minorities. However, the pseudo-mediators of Switzerland do not think to include such issues on their agenda. We call on our partners of the world majority to not let themselves be pushed into another anti-Russian or opportunistic move of the West. Thank you so much, Ms. Zakharova. Thank you. Is Reuters here with us? Yes, good afternoon, Maria Vladimirovna. You have discussed you have answered our question in detail when talking about David Cameron. I think I have something to add on that, but I will try to keep it to myself. No. Please do. Please add more details to your questions. Okay. The question will come as the following: if some kind of a strike is being carried out, what will be the reaction of Russia? this question should be addressed to those agencies of Russia which are responsible for the defense field of our country. And there is no doubt that we will respond. But the question is how crazy one has to be if to think that you are at the head of a civilized state and can make such statements at the same time. One have to suffer from severe amnesia if we remember what we're talking about, nuclear states. How irresponsible one has to be. I'm not even talking about him being a politician. I think what is characteristic of many Western politicians, but how harsh a man one has to be not to think about the consequences of such statements, because we know what some retaliation measures will follow. You know what, we always respond to such statements. Probably someone does not have to think about the interests of their own citizens, of the citizens of the countries of the collective West. We should think about the interests, but we do not do that. But on the other hand, we're talking about David Cameron, and what was the last time he thought when he decided to exit the European Union? No one can even fathom what the consequences are today, and why he is still popular is a question which should be addressed to the people of Great Britain, and I do not have to be involved with that. Thank you so much, and we also have 3 more questions, and we would like to get your comment on that. We would like to get your comment on the statements and actions made by the United States in regard to Russia in the very recent days. My first question is dedicated to sanctions, which were introduced by the United States against hundreds of companies from China, United Arab Emirates, Turkey. We were charged with helping Russia getting access to new technologies and the production of double designation. And these were the most large-scale sanctions which have been imposed to China as of yet. How could you comment on these actions? You know, this is just a trade war. It's a trade war which goes beyond the market. It's only aimed at maintaining their own role on the market. And as we do not have enough resources, we have to resort to such measures. And the retaining of China is another issue on the agenda because the rapid growth of Chinese economy irritates America to a grand extent. We want to maintain the economic leadership without having any lawful opportunity to do so. Thank you so much. And the second question is, on the very same day, the State Department of the U.S. have accused Russia of using chemical weapons against the armed forces of Ukraine in violation of the international conventions. We were talking about chloropicrin. And so in the words of the State Department of the U.S., that's what Russians used against Ukraine. Are you going to comment on this? Yes, because I think what the very cynical thing about this is that the American curators of the Kiev regime just allowed themselves such insinuations on the anniversary of the tragedy of the 2nd May, which I talked about in the very beginning of a briefing, because the Ukrainian neo-Nazis used chloropicrin back then in violation of CWC, which led to the death of more than 50 protesters. And it's on the eve of this anniversary that they make such statements. And there's a speculation of violation of Russia of the CWE is contrary to the real state of affairs on of a special military operation. Washington have thought up now better than to use those insinuations which have already been to practice in Syria. We have already made these insinuations against regarding the use of chemical weapons by Russia, and today this empty-worded accusations of usage of Russian armed forces of toxic chemicals and chemical weapons to fight against unrest is what is being done by Washington just to shift the blame and shift the focus from the numerous crimes being committed by the Kiev regime. And let me remind you, but on February 27th, the Federal Security Forces of Russia have publicized information about the detention of 3 agents of Ukrainian special services who were planning to conduct a terrorist attack in the Zaporozhye Oblast with a chemical weapon BZ. Let me remind you what it belongs to the United States. We had ampoules of this very chemical weapon with them. There are also other materials which can be used as evidence of Zelensky's role in that. The Ministry of Defense of Russia, as well as the MoFA of Russia, regularly public information on the Ukraine's violation of the CWC and the use of toxic chemicals against Russian soldiers and civilians, and the plans to organize the relevant provocations in regard to the chemical factories of Donbass and other new federal entities of Russian Federation. Unfortunately, some of them have already been put into practice. Thank you so much. And my last question has to do with Syria, because on the very first day, the organization Hand in Hand for Aid and Development referred to the United Nations Human Rights Committee complaining about Russia. They have accused the Russian troops on conducting strikes, airstrikes on the certain center, Kafr Nabil, in the Syrian Idlib on the 5th of May of 2019, which resulted in the deaths of 2 people. My question is, you have never quoted Russian NGOs which operate in Syria and in the direction of Syria. Unfortunately, Reuters does not quote them often either. You know, I have not seen those messages. This does not speak anything to me. We, in the United Nations Human Rights Committee, have not noticed this organizations talking, and it looks like you're just promoting this kind of organization by such questions. I'd like to think that this is not what you're doing here, but still I will look into this, and if there will be something to comment on, I will comment on that. But I would suggest that you just pay more attention to other human rights organizations and NGOs. I think you should just expand what you look into. Thank you. And this is the Moscow Post here. Yes, I will look into this, but I don't know what your European Bureau, what kind of information European Bureau looks into. Okay, so you made me smile, and now let's continue with the Moscow Post. Yes, good afternoon. We have 2 questions today. Could you comment on the plans of the Estonian authorities to refer to European Union and NATO of the alleged signals of navigation satellite GPS system being violated by Russia? You know, the Russian MoFA is not going to comment on that. You can refer to our relevant agencies, but this has nothing to do with MoFA. And my second question is, the heads of MFAs of Russia and Tajikistan have decided on admission of citizens to Russia, and we have published different interpretations of these discussions. Russian MFAs said we have given wide explanations to the partners on the measures being undertaken by the Russian special services in preventing terrorism, and Tajikistan said that there is a negative understanding of what the citizens are doing and the violation of their rights and freedoms. What do these differences come from? Could you please comment? You know, there is a high level of cooperation of Russia and Tajikistan in fighting against terrorism, and we have very similar positions on burning issues of international fight against terrorism, as well as